The Judgment Day has survived betrayals, breakups, and power struggles for years. But after what happened on Raw last night, fans think the faction may finally be turning on itself again, because one awkward clubhouse moment between Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez exposed cracks that are getting harder to ignore. A backstage segment on the June 1 edition of Raw from Turin, Italy, sparked fresh speculation that the faction could be nearing another breakup. Roxanne Perez had just come off a visibly devastating fall in the first round of the Queen of the Ring tournament, a fatal four-way that also featured Iwa Sky, Julia, and Lash Legend. Sky secured the victory after hitting her signature moonsault on Julia. And just like that, Roxanne's entire tournament run was over before it ever found a rhythm. The loss stung. And back in the Judgment Day clubhouse, it showed Perez was clearly frustrated by the loss when Liv Morgan entered in high spirits after learning she would be competing in the Queen of the Ring tournament herself. Raquel Rodriguez quickly pointed out Perez's mood, leading Morgan to address the situation. She walked in radiating energy, basically waving a victory flag, while her stablemate was still sitting with the sting of elimination. Liv stated that members of the Judgment Day don't pout about missed opportunities, but instead create new ones. She initially declared that she and Dominic Mysterio would become Queen and King of the Ring before quickly correcting herself. That slip, that one moment of self-correction, that's what the internet pounced on, because it told you everything about where Liv's head actually is. One fan wrote, "Can we please skip the Judgment Day BS and fast forward to the Liv Morgan versus Roxanne Perez feud already?" Another asked, "This is happening again." Meanwhile, one fan commented, "Creative must be arguing every week about when to split them, LOL." And another added, "Rox is gonna break. Uncle Finn was right, because Uncle Finn Balor, was the one who walked into that exact same clubhouse a few weeks earlier and told Roxanne point blank, 'Don't trust these people.'" Balor directly cautioned Perez about trusting the Judgment Day after his own bitter exit from the group. Meanwhile, Liv Morgan attempted to justify why Balor had been removed from the stable and encouraged Perez to remain loyal to the group. Roxanne chose Liv's side at the time. She hit Balor with a hammer to prove it, but that Turin moment, that clubhouse scene, planted a seed. And seeds like that don't stay dormant forever in the Judgment Day. Per WrestleVotes on Fightful Select, there has been internal frustration about the lack of direction for the Judgment Day duo. Morgan hasn't wrestled on TV since the Raw after WrestleMania when she defeated Sol Ruca. The Women's World Champion defeated Stephanie Vaquer for the title at WrestleMania. So the leader of the group, the Women's World Champion, has barely been in action. The young ones are fighting for their own tournament spots, and everyone in that clubhouse can feel it. The structure that kept this thing standing is getting looser every single week. Now, to understand why this moment cut so deep, you have to go back to where all of this started. Because Judgment Day didn't just stumble into dysfunction one Tuesday night in Italy. This has been building for a very long time, and it all traces back to one man being thrown out into the cold. Tension inside the Judgment Day erupted on the March 9 episode of WWE Raw at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, as Finn Balor was betrayed by the very group he helped build. He joined back in June 2022, and not as a guest or an add-on. Balor joined the stable in June 2022, aligning with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, and kicking former WWE star Edge out of the group. He was the architect who drafted the next generation of members. He was the glue that held the internal politics of the group together. WWE had been teasing dissension in the Judgment Day for what feels like a year, starting back when Dominic Mysterio first won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 41. Mysterio and Balor found themselves fighting over the same prize, as it seemed Balor would turn on Dirty Dom back then. He didn't. Then came the night that changed everything. The tension stemmed from the March 2 episode of Raw, when Dominic challenged Penta for the title. During that match, Dominic attempted to cheat and asked Balor to hand him the ring bell hammer. Balor refused. The moment ultimately cost Dominic the championship, as Penta went on to defeat him and capture the Intercontinental title the following week. The segment began with Dominic Mysterio entering the ring alongside Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. Dominic demanded a rematch for the Intercontinental Championship against Penta and blamed Balor for his recent title loss. Balor came out. He brought JD McDonough with him. He faced Dominic, and then he said it, the line that sealed his fate. Balor told Dom that maybe his father was right, and maybe he is just a spoiled little prick. The moment that sentence left his mouth, the whole thing detonated. McDonough suddenly turned on Balor, delivering a lariat that opened the door for a 4-on-1 attack. Dominic, Morgan, Rodriguez, and McDonough then unleashed a brutal assault on the former Universal Champion. The attack intensified when Dominic used a hammer-loaded 619 before hitting 2 frog splashes, with the second delivered onto a steel chair. The segment ended with Balor laid out in the ring as the rest of the group stood tall, while Mysterio had his reasons for turning on Balor. Many questioned why McDonough decided to kick his long-term tag partner to the curb. He held a stronger friendship with Balor than Mysterio, given their Irish connection, and he was trained and mentored by the WWE veteran. McDonough's turn was the part nobody saw coming, and it said everything about where the power in this group actually sits now. Morgan explained that she initially aligned with Finn Balor out of respect for his connection with Dominic Mysterio. She called him a washed-up loser and admitted it had been a pleasure watching him fall from grace. And just like that, the man who helped build the faction was gone, but not quiet, not done, and not without a warning to the people he left behind. Finn Balor snuck into the Judgment Day's clubhouse on April 27 to warn Roxanne Perez not to trust the faction. Perez kept it quiet and told Liv Morgan she had dismissed him. Think about what that moment meant. Balor, a man who had just been beaten within an inch of his career by these people, walked back into their space. Not to fight, not to antagonize, but specifically to pull Roxanne aside and tell her what he knew. Liv Morgan confronted Roxanne Perez backstage on tonight's edition of Raw. She demanded to know why Balor had been in their clubhouse and why Perez had not immediately reported the visit. The WWE Women's World Champion was not satisfied and forced Perez to promise twice that she would never keep secrets from the Judgment Day family again. Twice. Liv made her say it twice, like a made woman swearing an oath. The irony being that the word family kept getting used in a moment that looked nothing like family. On Raw before Backlash, Balor faced JD McDonough again, and the rest of the faction members were at ringside. The closing moments of the match saw Liv Morgan throw the bell hammer to Perez, and Perez wasted no time using it against the former world champion, leading to JD McDonough taking the victory. Perez had spent months being portrayed as a student in the Judgment Day, with Balor acting as her unofficial mentor. Perez explained that Balor recruited her because he saw her NXT accomplishments and believed she was the right person to strengthen the women's side of the group. He brought her up, he vouched for her, and she hit him with a hammer. That's not a story that ends there. Balor was ultimately betrayed by the very people he helped lead. The experience gave him first-hand knowledge of how quickly loyalties can change inside the Judgment Day. And now, weeks later, sitting in that clubhouse in Turin, watching Liv walk in, glowing about her Queen of the Ring spot, while Roxanne sat there with nothing. That warning had to echo loudly. If Perez continues to see Morgan putting herself first and ignoring the struggles of her teammates, she may eventually understand exactly what Balor was trying to tell her. The Balor chapter isn't a sidebar to this story. It's the instruction manual for everything that's about to happen. Here's the thing that gets overlooked in all of this. What happened to Balor wasn't new. It was a pattern. Judgment Day has been cycling through its own members since the very beginning, and every time, the same script plays out. Someone gets too big, or too close to power, or too honest, and then they're out. The stable was established at WrestleMania 38 in April 2022 by Edge, who recruited Damian Priest and later Rhea Ripley. 2 months later, following Finn Balor's addition to the group, Edge was kicked out and a no-leadership ideology was implemented. Edge created the faction and they turned it around and used it against him. That was the first exit. and it set the template. At SummerSlam 2024, it all came apart when Balor and Liv Morgan led a coup that saw both Ripley and Priest ousted from the group on the same night. Two of the group's biggest names gone in one night. The same people who helped build the faction to its championship peak were cut loose the moment the power dynamic shifted, and then Balor himself got the same treatment. In the end, Finn Balor met the same fate of Edge, the man he kicked out of Judgment Day 4 years ago. The circle is almost poetic if it wasn't so ruthless. Now look at who's left. The Judgment Day is currently composed of Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and Roxanne Perez. Morgan is the current Women's World Champion. The group also appears in WWE's sister promotion AAA, where Mysterio is the current AAA Mega Champion. On paper, that's loaded. Two championship holders, a rising star in Roxanne, a physical force in Rodriguez, and McDonough as the enforcer. But under the surface, the lack of cohesion within the Judgment Day has become intense. It looks like the members are now prioritizing their personal ambitions over the group's common goal. As a result, internal conflicts have arisen that seem to weaken the overall strength of the faction, and the numbers keep shrinking around the edges. With group members being sidelined one after the other, the numbers advantage seems to be falling gradually. A faction that can't stay healthy can't possibly stay at the top. Think about what that locker room has been through in under 2 years. In May 2025, Carlito returned to WWC and his contract with WWE expired in June, quietly removing him from the stable. In June 2025, Liv Morgan suffered a legitimate dislocated shoulder during a match against Kairi Sane, which required surgery, ruling her out of action for several months. Then Roxanne Perez got injured. At the turn of the new year, Perez was ruled out of action after undergoing surgery, which led to her missing several live tapings. And through all of that, the group kept reshaping itself, bringing people in, pushing people to the fringe, forcing loyalty oaths in locker rooms. It hasn't been as good or as impactful as when it was Ripley, Priest, and Balor, and a lot of people on the internet have been saying that out loud for a long time now. The fan who wrote after the Balor kickout that Finn kinda held things together and was selfless during their entire run was probably closer to the truth than anyone in that group wants to admit. One fan reckoned it was the beginning of the end. I can see this as the beginning of the end for TJD. Finn kinda held things together and was selfless during their entire run. TJD should go into the Hof one day. Now the glue is gone, and the next fracture point isn't hypothetical. It's already sitting in that clubhouse with a bruised ego and a Queen of the Ring loss fresh in her memory. The pieces are moving, and they're moving fast. Start with Balor himself. WWE revealed that Balor had been traded to the SmackDown brand, and the moment he landed on that side of the fence, the chessboard started looking very different. Oddly enough, Priest has been on SmackDown for over a year and is now tag team champion with R-Truth, the man who wanted to be in the group throughout the first half of 2024. And after beating Jade Cargill at WrestleMania, Ripley is also on the blue brand as the current WWE Women's Champion. Interestingly, Priest, Ripley, and now Balor are all back on the side of light as babyfaces. All three have admitted that Judgment Day was one of the best times of their career. And the story of Balor and Priest restarting their friendship after a bitter feud in 2024 could lead to some great storytelling. If WWE ever considered reuniting the OG Judgment Day, the table is set for that to happen on SmackDown this summer. Meanwhile, back on Raw, the version that's left is doing everything it can to look strong. But the Turin segment said something different, because you can only tell someone we're family so many times before the gap between the words and the actions becomes impossible to ignore. From a creative standpoint, a split from Liv Morgan could be exactly what Roxanne Perez needs. Although she has benefited from being associated with the Judgment Day, Perez is talented enough to stand on her own. A storyline centered around Roxanne, realizing that Morgan manipulated her trust, could instantly transform her into one of Raw's most sympathetic babyfaces. And it's not just Roxanne. One fan predicted, It's only a matter of time before Roxanne and Raquel have enough. Rodriguez has been part of the group since 2024, always in the role of loyal muscle, always the one doing the dirty work in matches, always the one who doesn't get the spotlight. With the trust issues with Morgan, there's an opportunity for even more tension and subterfuge to elevate the young stars further. What could be interesting would be if Perez were the nail in the coffin of Judgment Day, forcing a schism that has existed since long before Balor was ejected, allowing the faction's members to spin off in new directions of their own. Even within the leadership core, the signals are strange. Fans aren't the only ones unhappy with the direction for Dominic and Morgan coming out of WrestleMania. Per WrestleVotes on Fightful Select, there has been internal frustration about the lack of creative direction for the Judgment Day duo. Dom is the AAA Mega Champion, but barely featured week to week. Liv has the Women's World title, but hasn't wrestled since the Raw after Mania. The centerpiece of the faction is operating in a vacuum. This Friday on SmackDown, Dominic Mysterio is set to compete in the King of the Ring tournament in a match against Trick Williams, Damian Priest, and Braun Breaker. That's Dominic in the same match as Priest, the man who was brutally ejected from this same group 2 years ago. The man who is now on SmackDown, back on the right side, and standing across the ring from the guy who helped orchestrate his removal. Every week, the walls between these two worlds get thinner. The Judgment Day spent 4 years being the most dominant faction on Monday Night Raw. They held gold on 3 brands. They turned Dominic Mysterio from a mid-card kid into a fully formed villain. They launched careers and destroyed others. But the machine that drove all of that, the engine of genuine chemistry, real trust, and shared purpose, has been dismantled piece by piece. Edge first, then Priest and Ripley, then Carlito, then Balor. And now, the people still standing are starting to look at each other the same way everyone else looked at the people who got shown the door. After Perez's Queen of the Ring disappointment and Liv Morgan's apparent indifference, the cracks may already be beginning to show. If those issues continue to grow, Roxanne could soon discover that Balor was right all along. And when that realization lands, it's not going to be quiet. The Judgment Day isn't falling apart because one night went wrong. It's falling apart because the version of it that made everything work, the one built on actual loyalty, has been replaced by something that just uses the language of loyalty while running on self-interest. And that is not a foundation, that is a countdown.